Hi, Eric. Welcome to Funnel Vision Podcast. Excited to have you on today and share your tips, tricks, and expertise with our community of sales professionals. To start out, what's the one game-changing tactic that you rely on to build strong client relationships?
So I think the main key tactic for me is really getting to know my prospect. It's really getting to know your prospect and getting to know more about them, both from a professional standpoint and from a personal standpoint, to what their goals are. Too many people want to just go in there and tell you exactly what they have. I think it's the flip: is you want to know more about them to be as productive as possible.
Yes, absolutely. That's great advice, and I agree fully. It's important to know them, to spend time getting to know them, because if you don't know them, you're just in there, selling and not like really understanding or solving, which is what we should
Correct.
be doing. Yeah. What's the best piece of sales advice you've received, and how has it changed your approach?
The best sales advice I got was early on in my career: is you have two ears and one mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you speak. And that's kind of carried me on through my career, is just knowing that you know not speaking twice as much as I need to.
Right. Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what you said, for in the first question, right? Is it comes down to listening and being an active listener to, make sure that you're understanding versus just speaking to speak,
Correct.
for
Correct.
sure. Yeah. And what so I'm not sure how familiar you are with, kind of all the new AI tools. I know that I'm trying to, and learning as we go. They seem to be changing a lot. Um, you know, and it's shaking up the sales world. Like, how do you see, AI in sales and really in the future of sales?
So I think it'll really help on the research end. The research end of really getting to know more about your prospect before calling on them, and really automating the process of prospecting, automating that process. But you still need that human intervention. You still do. I don't think AI is going to replace a salesperson. I just don't. It's just my theory. At the end of the day, you gotta, know your prospect and know what you're doing in the end, you know, of the day with what you're trying to accomplish. With all these tools in place, yeah, there's good and bad to all of them. I think, what, from when I first started in sales, we didn't have computers. We had, a phone and note cards. That's how we dealt with things.
Right, right. Yeah, same. When I started in recruiting, we were faxing resumes. We had literally had like a Rolodex, and kind of going through like everybody's business card and contact card. And so technology's just changed, and I think as the technology changes, kinds of things adapt and and just change with it. But it will be interesting to see how AI really affects the sales world. I know that there's a lot of also like in recruiting and in sales recruiting, we have a lot of different tools that can be used, and like you said, great for researching and for learning about your prospect and for learning, background and history, and uncovering and figuring out like who to prospect and kind of things like that, but not to take over the human relationship aspect of it at all. That part has to, still very human and relationship driven.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the most important thing, is having the balance of what's been AI and what is actually human. What you need from a human standpoint. Because I think, listen, in the last 15, 20 years, buyers have come more informed. It's all the information out there. I think now it's the flip, and the salesperson has to be as informed, if not more informed, than the buyer.
Right. Yes, I definitely agree there. What do you think is something that a salesperson should stop doing immediately if they want to become more successful?
So I think you don't have to sell. You have to get to know somebody and be there to help somebody. If you're not there to help, you know, advance kind of the company and advance them from a personal or a professional perspective, you're really not helping. If you're going into just what your product or your service is about, you're not connecting with your prospect, and it's about connection now. Because they have
Right, right.
choices. They have choices. You have, tons of choices there. For any, product or service, there's, hundreds of choices out there.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you what's kind of the best way or like the most meaningful way to do that? Just kind of how do you suggest people take the time to, is it more just listening to what they say or learning about their, also learning about their family, asking questions, just kind of that deep relationship building?
Yeah, I think it's about a balance of knowing more about them from a personal perspective and from a professional perspective. It's having that balance and really connecting with the prospect. It's about having a connection from a human standpoint, but on the flip side is really adding value in the process. You're there to add value and, be their trusted advisor and advance them from a personal and a professional perspective.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. And so for us, at Talent Harbor here, and what we do is, recruiting for sales talent. And finding top tier sales talent is difficult. It's not easy, and that's why, many companies come to us looking for help. But what are your strategies, or kind of what are the things that you look for to spot, really great, talented rock star salespeople?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the two A's, and I've had this since the beginning of my career of hiring people. It's the right attitude and the right aptitude. Do you have the right attitude during good times and bad times to be successful, to be a value add to the company? And do you have the aptitude to understand the value of the product or solution that you're selling? And be able to communicate that in a way that your prospect will see you as adding value.
Right. It's something that we talk about a lot, in sales recruiting, because, sometimes we work with clients and they're like, this candidate must have, this, like, and all of these, very specific things. But for us, yes, there is some experience that's needed. You have to have, certain industry experience. Some things are non-negotiable, but really what you're saying, the attitude and aptitude is so much more important than sometimes like certain skills that you can learn, because you can't really train for attitude and an
No.
aptitude, but you can train for, specific skills and things like that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point is what can you train for and what can't you train for?
Hmm.
There's the intangibles that that you can't train for, that, someone has to have. They just have to have those qualities to be successful. I'll take those people that have great attitudes and the understanding and take them and, coach them in the process. It's about the coaching and mentoring in the process of a very good sales leader. And that's why, in the long run, your best salesperson doesn't always make your best manager. That's a dichotomy that everybody goes through, companies go through.
Hmm.
It's, being able to mentor and coach in the process.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think last week had even a LinkedIn post about that. Your best salesperson is not always, and often is not, your best manager. They're completely two different skill sets. And then also oftentimes your best salesperson doesn't even want to be your manager. They want to be, kind of in an individual contributor role because they're killing it and doing well.
Correct.
And sometimes there's like less, kind of upside and, potential. Not that, there's career potential, there's career growth, but it's a different balance for that. So I absolutely agree with you. It's important to learn each person individually, but attitude and aptitude are, the things that you can't train, and it's so valuable to find those right people. And we also say as well, culture fit, for the organization. Like if you find somebody that's a great culture fit, great attitude, aptitude, well, then they should be able to learn and be trained in,
Right.
in certain things, as long as they have the basics too.
For me, it comes back to something that I learned early on from a high school coach of mine. We had shirts made, and it was 99% and 1%. And on the 99%, inspiration, determination, perspiration, and 1% luck. And you know what? It's a theory. It's something that has stuck by me throughout all the years. Is, will somebody really, do the job necessary to be
Hmm.
successful? And a lot of people say they do, and in the long run, they want to take shortcuts, and you can't take shortcuts. It's not about taking shortcuts. It's about doing those things that are necessary to be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Eric, tell us a little bit about your background. What do you do, and where can people find you?
Sure, sure. So, I am a fractional chief revenue officer. I could be found on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also at eBalis, EBALIS, at sales, SALES, acceleration, CELERATION.com. Feel free to send me an email, here to help with a conversation. Just want to be able to give back. I give back with a lot of conversations to salespeople. I coach salespeople, sales leaders, and also act as a fractional chief revenue officer if a company doesn't have one.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Eric, for coming on today. Appreciate it.
No,
And looking forward to working with you again in the future.
I appreciate it, Alana. I enjoyed the conversation. You have a great day.
Thanks, you too.